Walked out of an interview scissor. I went back to school after a few years away and I'm looking for a job near campus that can pay my rent. I decided to apply to be a clerk at a bookstore down the street as it's well established and eccentric enough that it makes a news story every few years. I love books and spent years working in special collections for a different college library, not to mention my retail experience. So I expected to at least be able to showcase why I'd be a good fit. The clerk who gave me the application warned me it had a test attached and I'd need to make extra time. I didn't have anywhere to be, so I stuck around. The packet in total took me close to an hour. After the general application questions were literature questions that honestly made me feel unenlightened. They asked about the regions Eudora Welty wrote about, Button Gwinnett's occupation, Bible verses, what Alfred Stieglitz did. Even though his name was misspelled on the test, I don't like the Stones, so I didn't recognize one of their lyrics. But I'm expecting less sympathy for that, lol. Surely they were all famous names. But the majority were titles and authors I just hadn't encountered yet. I like Audre Lorde over Sir Walter Scott. What can I say? The clerk got the manager after I was finished. But I didn't realize she was the manager at first because she came out without greeting me or looking me in the eye. The first thing she did was to glance at my application and say, "Oh, you're at X school? We don't usually hire students because we have day shifts. What days are you available?" At this point I was pretty irritated. Why wouldn't a bookstore hire students from next door? And she was clearly more interested in my application than talking to me. So I was smart and said I'm available for most of them. And that my availability was listed in my application. The manager looked me in the eye for the first time and said, "Well, I'm asking you." At this point I politely asked for my bag from behind the counter and said I was leaving. The manager apologized for being tired at 3 p.m. I said it's not her fault and she said, "I know." I was thrilled to walk out of that place. Surely people have worse stories than mine. But the moral here is to please know your worth and not to swallow garbage for minimum wage retail. A literature test for a part-time, minimum wage job in a bookshop? They are delusional. Why do you want to work here? Well, I'm a student, and I have an interest in learning more about literature. I like learning from people who are interested in literature. And I want to be exposed to as many books and book-knowledgeable people as possible. Sorry, we're only hiring people who already know everything and have no incentive to earn money. Also, apply this logic to 90 of demands for experience for entry-level jobs. I worked at a bookstore for a little bit, and in the interview the manager asked me questions about books that weren't knowledge trivia questions. They were questions like, who is your favorite author? What is your favorite genre? What's the most recent book you read? These were clearly to ensure that the people hired on actually enjoyed books. But no requirements about what kind based on my coworkers who all had varied tastes and backgrounds. A test for applying for a job? Fuck that so much. Also they sound like pretentious assholes. Not knowing a certain dusty sorry author or some random song lyrics doesn't make an applicant stupid or ignorant. These people suck. That's some bullshit. I worked at a bookstore for 4 years. And I never had to know anything other than the basics about books and how to talk about current bestsellers. They sound like they don't actually want employees. Any power plays or rude behavior should be the signal that screams yo shouldn't work for that business. Good for you for walking out. So this is the store Joe Goldberg works at. Well, as for being tired at 3. I work 7-3, so yeah, if it was the end of their shift. I get it, lol. But that test? Good lord. Are they seeking someone with a master's degree in literature to apply? Most bookstores I know of would be thrilled if someone knew a few of American classic books and maybe some Shakespeare. If you have any clue the difference between historical fiction and historical drama, they hire you on the spot. You dodged a bullet for sure. I almost applied to a local bookstore that is a glorified BN but was turned off by a similar literature test that is part of the application. I had to nosily check that it wasn't the same store. But turns out we're on opposite sides of the state. I've worked in an even more niche bookstore, a library, and now an archive. Just fine without being tested on my book knowledge. Bookstores that do this are annoying. It's a retail job unless they're going to start paying booksellers a commission. Who cares? Reminds me of the time I applied to half-price books years ago. There was portion of essay questions on the application, and they wanted a full page of writing for the answers. Questions were about why you wanted to work there, opinions on literature, and how you would help customers. I did my best, but didn't get hired. I suppose it's a way to weed out many applicants for a highly desired entry-level position. I once had interviews at Microsoft. I spent the day being expected to solve logic puzzles given by arrogant young men. One I solved in a different way, and that was not acceptable to the one giving me the puzzle. I left thoroughly pissed off and refused to come back. They did offer me the job, but I didn't want to go near them. I walked out of an interview once where a manager asked me if I was a sex offender for absolutely no reason. I'm not. I looked at him puzzled, and he stated that he had to ask because sex offenders often look for jobs in the stated industry, pool and spa parts sales. I ended the interview shortly after his explanation. Even if I was, that doesn't seem appropriate in any setting to outright ask. If they are interested in a candidate, they could pay for a background check and send a rejection letter. Hell, if I was, they could Google search my name and it would probably be right there. I had a talent agent representing a cybersecurity firm reach out to headhunt me for a role they were creating on the back of building a new operations center. She insisted I complete a test to gauge my knowledge rather than just look at my fucking CV. The test was 90 questions long and they weren't easy questions. I politely blocked their company on LinkedIn and the recruiter. These tests are a major red flag, as it shows the recruiter isn't capable of interviews and therefore knows nothing about the job. The first person you meet is already incompetent. Sounds like the Strand in NYC? We don't usually hire students because we have day shifts. That's just fucking moronic. Particularly because college students can work during the fucking day, depending on their class schedule. On top of that, why did she even bother to continue the interview after that? If they refused to hire college students, why did she care if you walked out? Honestly, I don't mind if there's an entry test or request of a copy of diploma for jobs that actually requires a degree, like for example accounting or IT. But minimum wage customer service jobs? The fuck outta here. As an English major, former university library staff, front desk nights, not special collections, and a published author, I think I'd have been answering most of those questions. NFC. I read interesting stuff. Every single minimum wage job I've had where I've been given a test on a piece of paper instead of just being properly trained has been the worst job I've ever worked, and I wouldn't be there longer than a month. These employers must have multiple sticks up their lazy asses. Back when Family Video was around, the one in my town made you take a test at the end with some algebra and shit. Like, come on y'all. I'm stacking DVDs. Sounds like the Strand. They infamously have a job application quiz.